Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin, our tour through my Penguin Classic wall, book by book, author by author. Sorry, no Frida today. She's curled up tight in a ball at the small of my back, off camera. She's sound asleep. I don't want to disturb her. She tends to feel like curling up in a ball and sleeping when it's freezing cold, as it typically is in May in Boston. But we have in this Penguin Classic tour we have hit a sort of a vein of Penguin Classic Deluxe editions, which have the French flaps and the deckled edges and new cover art and whatnot. And the book that we're looking at today could easily, in some nightmarish vision, be a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition, but it is not. It was encamped among the rest of them, but it is not a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition. Instead, it's a Penguin Classic hardcover. Also very nice. Also not meant for classrooms. Also meant clearly to be wrapped and given as a gift. And I thought that it was lucky that it happened to be the next book that fell to my hand, since it is, after all, a Sunday. And those of you who are religiously inclined probably associate Sunday with putting on uncomfortable clothing, going to an uncomfortable building, offering uncomfortably fake greetings to a bunch of people you don't like, and then listening for an hour to a homily that badly misunderstands basic fundamental tenets of human nature. So what better occasion than Sunday to talk about the Communist Manifesto? This is the Penguin Classic hardcover deluxe edition with the built-in cloth bookmark, and the cover designed by Coralie Bickford Smith. Very nice things, very neat in the hand. And this has an introduction and notes by Gareth Stedman Jones, the historian, and it's a very good volume. And it was sent to me by Penguin, and it's not quite as painful to go through it as it would be to go through a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition, which would have to gussy up this nonsense in some nice visual set and some nice visual. I'm glad that I don't have a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of the Communist Manifesto. If there is such a thing, I'm glad that I don't know about it. I'm glad I've never seen it. I'm glad that I don't get it in the mail, because I might feel compelled to reread it. I have read this thing many times, and it's junk. It's nonsense. It's also mind-bogglingly, stultifyingly dull, because it's a manifesto, and all manifestos are mind-bogglingly boring. They're interested just in yelling at you. And those, quite a few of you, of course, every one of you has had to deal with some specter of communism haunting Europe or wherever else for the whole of your lives. It's one of the most influential works of nonfiction that's ever been written. Certainly, I would think that it's affected more people than any other work of nonfiction that's ever been written. And you're going to know already its basics, so we don't need to dwell on them. This does not need to be a long Daily Penguin. The basics are that the whole of human history is basically one long, protracted warfare between classes, between economic classes. With, on the one hand, a small oligarchic bourgeoisie that control the means of production and ruthlessly exploit the people on the other side, which is the proletariat, the workers, who are vastly greater in number, but do not control the means of their production, and therefore they do not control their destiny. And Marx and Engels, mostly Marx, here put forward a different view, a world that they posit that tension, that antagonism has always existed and always will exist as long as there is an unequal ownership, as long as the few benefit from the labor of the many, and that system needs to change. That there needs to be an abolishment of private property. There needs to be progressive income tax, so that the more money you make, the more you give back to the common community, common schooling, common medicine, all that sort of stuff, and that is meant that idea is meant. See, my mind is wandering, because when it comes to communism, I'd rather talk about anything else. It is the most anyway. That attitude is the chicken and the egg. It is embarrassingly stupid. It posits that there are two kinds of human beings. that there are two different classes of human beings, not in terms of economic earning, but in terms of DNA, in terms of biology, that there are basically two sentient human species on Earth. There isn't. There's only one. But it does, nevertheless implies that all throughout here, that the oligarchs are the few, the bourgeoisie, are vulpine, they are voracious, they are predatory, they are soulless, they are amoral, they are exploitative, they are deaf to justice, they are deaf to equality, they are deaf to social right or social good. They are a different kind of human being. And the people in the vast majority of the proletariat are a different kind of human being. They are inherently virtuous and selfless. They see the better world that they could have if only this other alien oppressor race were not in their way. It's a very 19th century way of thinking, embarrassingly so. And I believe, I know that there are quite a few people who might disagree with me, I believe that it is, as most manifestos are, a long screed against basic human nature. It is basic human nature to get more, to accumulate more, because accumulating more equates to comfort. It is basic human nature, I would say it's basic biological nature, to want comfort, to seek comfort. And the pattern that Marx describes in this book is that the system where a small cadre of bourgeoisie exploit the vast majority of the workers by controlling their means of production and hoarding most of the resulting wealth for themselves. The pattern that Marx describes is that those people in that bourgeoisie will just take more and more and more until finally it becomes intolerable, until finally the parasite begins to afflict its host noticeably. And then the host, the vast body of the host, will shake it off. And the system will start all over again. Presumably with the new bourgeoisie drawn from the ranks of the virtuous proletariat, as one or more people are morally defective and seek to lord it over others. It's just it borders on being philosophy, and because it borders on being philosophy, it borders on being mind-bogglingly dull tautology from start to finish, just an idiotic misreading of humanity in order to build a house of cards, or more to the point in this case and in all cases, in order to create a structure that justifies the very system that it purports to criticize. Communism, some of the basic ideas that were given birth in this manifesto, has been used to oppress more human beings than any other governmental system in the history of the world. More people have been born, lived, and died in abject, starving, mind-emptied misery by the tenets that are allegedly espoused in this book than any other tenets in the history of humanity. It always gives me a little mordant thrill when people all over the ideological spectrum say, "Well, at least we're not back in the days of absolute monarchs." So let's do the head count. Feel free to come over here, crack a bottle of wine, and we'll do the head count on how many people were made miserable under other governmental systems that you think belong in the Dark Ages, and how many were made miserable under this. And all of that would be to one side. All of that would be secondary if this were good reading. I would still mention it. I would still harp on it. This is an embarrassingly naive view of human nature, but I would still excuse it if this were good writing, if this were well done. But it isn't. It isn't well done. It is stutteringly, jerkily, herky-jerkily written. It's a poor reading experience, even apart from its ideological content, which isn't to fault Penguin for sending it to me. I'm glad that they did, and I guess I've kept it all this time on a shelf somewhere because I thought, maybe you kind of sort of have to have a copy of the Communist Manifesto. I think there's a Black Spine Penguin Classic of this. I might even have it. But I do not need a gift copy of this book. So this is not going back up on the shelf. This will go on a pile in the other room, and when the coast is clear, I will just send it to David Murphy. Whether he likes it or not, whether he disagrees with it or not, it's something he'll probably appreciate more than I will. Or if he doesn't want it or already has this, I'll send it to some other politically inclined young man. But I won't keep this myself. I don't need, even as well footnoted as it is, any Penguin Classic is going to have enough footnotes to get me by. So I don't I appreciate that Penguin sent this to me, but I don't really need to keep it. So, and that is another function of the Daily Penguin that I've mentioned, is that it is helping me to control my Penguin Classics. It's helping me to sort of, I've pulled off a lot, probably 24 Penguin Classics so far, even in just 2 months, that I don't want, or that are doubles. And that's great. That's a fringe benefit for me, is to go through the Penguin Classics and just fix them. And although I would feel wrong if I didn't have a Penguin Classic of the Communist Manifesto, if I didn't have a version of it somewhere, I don't think I need more than one, and I don't think I need this. So I think that will go. But anyway, that's your Penguin Classic for today. I know that one of the elements of Penguin Classic that a lot of you like is the recommend section. And I'm afraid this is a lot like some of the split screen, the Jekyll and Hyde recommendations that I've made in the past, because it pains me to say it, but nevertheless, you cannot be a well-read human anywhere in the world in the year 2020 without having taken an afternoon to read the Communist Manifesto. I think it's loathsome, but you have to do it. It's that important. It's the same thing as On the Origin of Species or the Bible. It has achieved, one way or another, by hook or by crook, it has achieved the same level of importance. And so it's that part of it is a recommend. You really, unless you don't care about such things, and bless your hearts, I have heard from a great number of you who write to me and say, well, okay, I watched your video, and it sounds like what you're saying is, if you don't care about that sort of thing, that sort of box ticking, then you don't need to read this book, and you don't. In that sense, if that's what you think, bless you, first of all, because that's a great way to be as a reader. You shouldn't, after all, care. If that's the way you are, then instead of taking an afternoon to read the Communist Manifesto, take 20 minutes to read the Wikipedia article on the Communist Manifesto. That will be fine. What I'm saying is, you absolutely have to be conversant with the ideas. But you don't necessarily have to read the book. Not necessarily. I know that's making some people howl, but you don't necessarily have to read the book. Your reading time, after all, is very precious. And the book, no one's quoting the book for its style. The book is important for the ideological concepts and how they've been used and mapped and twisted and expanded over the century. So there is your Penguin Classic Jekyll and Hyde recommendation. On the one hand, if you want the basic toolkits of understanding human existence in the 21st century, the reason why Penguin Classic would make a version of the Communist Manifesto at all, the reason why they would include it in their line, if you care about that, then you have to read the thing and see what you think of it. And then you'll know how it's being used or misused everywhere else that you encounter it. And you are going to encounter it everywhere for your whole life. We can't get away from this. After all, there's precious little governmental system that's better for that ruling, vicious, jack-heeled cadre of bourgeoisie than one that says that nobody should own anything. Just that all ownership should be in common. Well, there's never been a communist leader who thought that his house shouldn't be bigger than yours. But anyway, if you are one of those people and you want to know why Penguin put this in their lineup, and you want to know why, you want to read the thing that has been the seedbed of so much human misery, then you should read the book. If you're not one of those people, it doesn't make you any less of a reader, and it doesn't make you any less intellectually curious. I found it kind of funny, all these people who've emailed me. I leave my email on every video. I've had many emails from people, especially when it comes to works of philosophy like Aristotle or other philosophers that we're going to get to. I've had quite a few people, accomplished, lifelong, veteran readers, principals of their high schools, assistant principals of their school districts, write to me and say, well, I know that I can make my own decisions, but could I have your permission to skip this one? And I think that's just great. That's just fantastic. Because of course you do have my permission to skip this one. This is, on one level, the one level that I'm talking about, you have to spend the afternoon to read this. On the other level that I'm talking about, it is absolutely not worth your time. Absolutely not worth your time at all. There isn't a single page, not one page, of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien that doesn't exhibit more accurate understanding of human nature than the whole of the Communist Manifesto. So you have to make your balance accordingly, especially if your reading time is very limited. So there you go. I know the Jekyll and Hyde Penguin recommendations are not always helpful, but that's nothing I can do. Every once in a while, we'll hit a Penguin Classic where I can just say, you absolutely should read this, go and do it right away. We've had a few of those recently. We might have one tomorrow, for all I know. But this is not one of those. So there you go. And it's also not the same thing as, for instance, The Heart of Darkness, which I'm sure you could tell from the Heart of Darkness entry in Your Daily Penguin. I'm not a big fan of the book. It has some memorable scenes, but it's written in incurably cloggy prose and is overconstrued, I believe, very much overconstrued. There isn't as much meat on the bone as a century of commentary would lead you to believe. But you should read The Heart of Darkness. It won't take you any time at all. It's like 90 pages long. The Communist Manifesto is a different thing. It represents more of a commitment, so I'm going to let you decide which side of the Jekyll and Hyde Penguin recommend you want to fall on. I'm going to wrap this up, but tomorrow we will probably not have a philosophical manifesto to deal with, so we might be on smoother ground. We'll see. We'll wrap it up and we'll see each other then. Thank you, BookTube.